Hi, this is Brian Leubitz of Calitics.com, and I'm sitting here in the mayor's office, room 200, famous room 200. Mayor Gavin Newsom.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank you so much for doing this with us.
My pleasure.
So, exciting week for you. You were down in LA.
Down in LA for the debates, and we thought there'd be three. In fact, they built a podium for three, and or a desk, and there were only two. And obviously, as a Democrat, it was a great debate because we focused more on our things we have in common as opposed to our differences. So I thought the party was the winner last night, not necessarily one or the other candidates.
I think that was some great issues came up, including
Yeah.
one of them was healthcare.
And they actually talked about it in depth and nuance, both plans, and I appreciated that. You rarely get that in a debate nowadays, and it showed something that's important on this topic, that they both understood it. And I can assure you, as the mayor of a city that's starting to implement universal health care, the first city of the United States to do it, how extraordinarily complex this is, and how in many respects ignorant I am still of the complexity of all the issues. And I've spent almost 14 years to come to this point in time with this initiative. And so I was very thankful in one respect that they gave the candidates enough time, but also appreciative that they both reflected on this issue and appreciate the enormity of the task and the importance of it.
Well, it certainly is a big task, and it's been a problem here in the state of California for quite a while. I mean, last year was supposedly the year of healthcare reform.
Yeah.
It didn't pan out that way.
Not yet.
But there's still, I guess, progress to be made, I suppose.
Yeah.
You actually wrote on Calitics, among other places,
Yeah.
about the ABX1.
Yeah.
And there's a couple concerns you raised.
Yeah.
One of them was how cost controls and a mandate together, how that's
Exactly.
going to work.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate concern, and it's a work in progress. Look, here's my bottom line, and I also wrote in that same blog the following. A, what an historic effort, and what a remarkable accomplishment to get this far. And hats off to everyone involved, Democrats and Republicans. I mean, the governor, to his credit, a Republican. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. And I appreciated that. Second, there were components of it, the purchasing pool and others, that I think will get us on the way to single parent. And that's happened to be where I come out on this. And in San Francisco, that's in essence what we're doing. And the reason for me is simple. It's math. It's dollars and cents. You could take the profit, you could take the administrative costs out of the insurance. You got a 33% head start against any other plan. And that's, for us in San Francisco, one of the reasons I think we're going to succeed with this plan. We, as of last week, and this was an important benchmark, have enrolled over 10,000 people in our plan, hundreds more every single week. We'll be at 35, 40 plus thousand by June of this year, and we think we'll be well on our way to getting everybody else within the next 12 to 18 months. One of the principal concerns, though, we should have, and I continue to have, even with our plan, is affordability. And it's one thing to talk about those without health insurance. It's another to talk about those with health insurance that can barely afford it and may not have it. And so that's another critical component. We laid out in detail what amendments we wanted to see. The Senate couldn't figure it out with the timelines that were prescribed. And I'm hopeful now, and I was talking to some folks in the last few days, that they'll take components of the plan and we'll look at an incremental approach so that we're not left with absolutely nothing except hard feelings. And so I think we're moving in the right direction, so I'm not really to give up yet in the state.
And one of the things which is so important with the election in 2008 is that healthcare is an easier issue to deal with at that national level.
Yeah.
The plan that ABX1 was fairly similar to the plan that Senator Clinton was proposing.
Yeah.
On a lot of levels.
A lot of them.
So, there's also arguments for Senator Obama's plan and for Senator Edwards' plan before he dropped out.
Yeah, right. Which is more similar to Clinton's plan, which
right.
is more similar to the state plan. Yeah.
Right. How do we get the federal plan to reflect in this that gets us more towards single payer?
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not naive to the politics of this, and the politics, at the end of the day, are those with the deepest pockets seem to win because they have the loudest voices. Harry and Louise, if you want to go back historically to the beginning of a lot of the national discussion around this, the she didn't suit after Hillary Clinton took this on. And that's very damaging and very problematic looking forward, to be candid with you. And it's not just the big insurance companies, not just the big pharma companies. Labor has a big part of this as well. Hospital councils have a big part of this as well. And consumers that have theirs, that don't want to see anything change. And so all of us have some responsibility for being part of the problem. Look, at the end of the day, is it going to take 57 million Americans, or is it 77? I remember when Michael Dukakis ran president, and they talked about this national shame of 33 million Americans without health insurance. Then it hit 35, 40, 45, and then recently 47. We have 6.5 to 7.2 million Californians without it. We're the #1 state in terms of total ownership. Does it have to hit 10 before people say, my God, this is serious? Or do we have to bankrupt county hospitals? Because we ultimately already have universal health insurance in this country and state, and that's in your county hospitals in the emergency room. That ultimately was the conclusion we took in San Francisco, that enough's enough. We spend $1.3 billion a year in public health in our city. This is one of the leading costs of government. $6.1 billion budget, $1.3 billion is healthcare. We're paying for non-immigrants. We're paying for people that don't have health insurance already. We're paying for their acute appendicitis bursting as opposed to the preventative costs, which cost us substantially less. And we said, look, if we're already spending money, why don't we do it in the right way and focus on prevention and health maintenance, and ultimately made that decision. I think that is ultimately what will happen at the state, as it did in Massachusetts recently, and other states are looking at this, and then eventually will find its way in the federal debate, unless we have a Democrat, candidly, as president, that will drive that debate from a federal level. And that's the extraordinary opportunity with these two candidates that I think are committed to it. But I do candidly think, as much as I really do admire the plan that Obama put together, that plans to me almost are trivial compared to someone that actually can deliver. And on this issue, I just confess, I know how tough it is. And I've seen it in my entire lifetime. Nothing happened of substance. Heck, we couldn't even get S-chip expanded this year. And this is 2008. I don't think there's any question that there's only one person who could possibly do it. And that's someone that has failed miserably in the past, that I believe has learned a lot from that miserable failure. And I think she's the only chance we have to do something. So I think when all my Barack friends get it, we get in the compare and contrast plan, I'm like, guys, let's forget the nuances. Both plans will change when reality strikes, when they get to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's who can drive this. And I just think, love her or hate her, Hillary Clinton's the only one I think could possibly drive this. And if that's the case, and she's in, I think this healthcare debate is going to change dramatically across this country.
Well,
that wasn't a yes/no answer.
Yeah.
I apologize, but
well, I mean, I think there's, people on both sides of the debate of the presidential argument, which it's easy to see that very little change can happen if there's a Republican president. But either way, if there's a Democrat, whichever Democrat it is, it's a step forward.
big time. Certainly on the children's health side. That's sacrosanct. I mean, you're not going to get a veto. I mean, we finally reconciled that one. Even most of the Republican candidates are claiming, because they understand politics, but I don't trust them, candidly, on this one. I think they'll flip. On this one, at least that, I think we're secure. We'll be advancing.
And one more thing in healthcare, which is, you've owned a business in the past.
Yeah.
As a business owner, providing healthcare for your employees, and especially in a business where there's competitive pressures from outside of the country, how do we function where we're at a 25% disadvantage of the countries who already have health insurance?
Well, I think that's why you need universal health insurance. I mean, remember, the automobile manufacturers came out with a letter, an open letter to Congress, I guess it was a year, 2 years ago, and said we're now spending more on healthcare than we are on steel. These are the automobile companies. I mean, was the idea that GM should just be a large insurance company disguised as an automobile company? I mean, that's in essence what's happening. There was an interesting, I think it was Toyota, don't quote me, but I think it was Toyota. It was going to open its 7th manufacturing plant in the United States, did a big RFP, went out there in the States, Michigan, everyone doing $1 billion subsidies to get these guys and these jobs in. And they went to Ontario, Canada. And when asked why, they said one reason, it's easy, insurance. So we're losing jobs because we haven't reconciled this. We're not competitive in this country because we haven't reconciled this. We have got to create a framework to cap these premiums, to address the cost factors, to deal with modernization of our technology in collaboration within the community clinics, the county clinics, the state hospitals, and regionally as well as across this country. And then we've got to get serious about getting everyone insured. And I think, look, there are 9.3 million Americans that make over $75,000 a year that I believe can afford health insurance. That's the difference between the Clinton plan and Obama's plan, is I think these folks should get into the game. I think there are a lot of folks healthy, think they're healthy, younger they tend to be, or at least young at heart. Even if they're older, they don't think they get. I think they need to come in, and that leverages the resources. So we reduce those costs, and we can stabilize it through other factors, and we can deal with tax and credits and incentives for the lower end that we, I believe, can address. That's the approach I think will work best. And incidentally, it's the approach that I think Senator Kennedy believes can work best. And perversely and ironically, he's out here stumping for Obama when he was there with Romney supporting the mandates that are similar to what Hillary's doing. I just thought that was an interesting and curious thing in this whole discussion.
Well, there's complications to every plan.
Yeah.
And Massachusetts is dealing with some of the problems with cost controls, which seems to be the biggest problem. It's hard to maintain those costs going up 8, 10, 15% a year.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge. It's interesting. They tended to level out compared to their meteoric rise that we were seeing double digit during the last 7 or 8 years. But that's could be an anomaly. But the cost factor. Look, this is just about morality, but it's also, as you suggest, as a former business owner in 17 small businesses that did health insurance. It's also about competitiveness, and there is an economic imperative here for our country's future. And so this should bring Democrats and Republicans, people of all stripes together. I don't think anyone can argue that an acute care system at the emergency room providing universal health care is the most efficient form of health care. And that means getting it on the front end, looking at prevention, looking at managed care, and not in the context of insurance companies talk about it, but in the context of focusing on physical health and mental health, focusing on chronic disease management, focus on efforts like in San Francisco to deal with the obesity epidemic that's driving type 2 diabetes and disproportionately affecting our youth, as we're doing with calorically sweetened beverages and looking at a beverage fee, which is very controversial, the first city in America to do that. Those are ways that, that to me is the debate we need to be having. Move from the need to be universal, get it, and then talk about the nuances and the gradations of quality care. We should be focused on quality, not access. But sadly, we have to focus on access. But eventually, the debate needs to shift dramatically and quickly to quality.
Hopefully that will happen in 2009, January 20th.
Yes. When a Democrat is sworn in to
exactly.
all the Constitution.
So to pivot a little bit towards something more local, coming up in a little less than 2 weeks from now, is the 4-year anniversary
It's 4 years.
Of marriage today.
Yeah.
Which you brought up.
I got in trouble.
In a letter. Yeah, I that's on there too. You might have gotten blamed in 2004.
Yeah, how do you like that? I woke up after election day and then had to deal with that one. Looking around, 6 billion people on the planet are pointing fingers. It's pretty extraordinary. Let me tell you, I was thinking about this the other day. You have every single presidential candidate, save maybe one. I haven't frankly checked in with Huckabee on this, though someone quickly can find out. That all appear reasonably open to civil unions. And I remember it wasn't that long ago when Howard Dean, in his book, referenced a conversation he had with Bill Clinton, who said, Bill Clinton did, and I didn't appreciate this, but we can agree to disagree. He said, "You have given up your right ever to be President of the United States, Governor Dean, because of your support of civil unions." He was the maverick, remember, on civil unions. Now it's the mainstream position. Dick Cheney shares it. We know that, as do all the presidential candidates on the Democratic side. So we have come an enormous way in just a few years, an extraordinary way. We had a hard time in San Francisco when I started Local Positive. Domestic partnership was just, people were going insane. Catholic Charities had, they said we're going to pull out of investing in our city. Salvation Army got out of the city. Sky was going to fall in. These big multinational corporations saying this is the end of the world as we know it. That was domestic partnership. That wasn't many years ago. Democrats had a hard time with that. Now, domestic partnerships seem insulting. I mean, talk about separate and unequal. Now it's civil unions. I'm convinced we're going to look back at civil unions as we did domestic partnerships go. That's separate and unequal. Boy, that's insulting. You can't have two institutions for the same thing. Marriage is marriage. Civil unions are civil unions. I don't see any presidential candidate, Democrat or Republican, that supports civil unions that is calling to get rid of their marriage certificate and call for a civil union. There's something about marriage. And as long as there's something about an institution that not everyone can join, only on the basis of sexual orientation, let alone race and ethnicity, then it's fundamentally flawed, fundamentally wrong, and for me, fundamentally unconstitutional. Until we have a constitution that is advanced for all Americans, then we can't have a foundation in which to grow all these other proposals that we're talking about. So to me, this is sacrosanct. And I'm very intense about it. And I disagree with my good Democrats on this, but I think it's politics more than it is core.
And it's a big leap of faith and leap of courage to actually go out and say that this is what's right. And it's just, good policy over good politics.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be. I mean, it was the same thing was said in 1967 when 16 states denied interracial marriage. 67, not 37, not 27, 1967. 16 states until Loving versus State of Virginia finally threw that out in the Supreme Court. And it's very interesting. It's a really true story. People need to remember this. Blacks couldn't marry whites, whites, Asians, African Americans, etc. couldn't marry in 16 states in the United States in 67. Overwhelming majority of Americans opposed interracial marriage at the time because it was not traditional marriage. What's next? Again, the sky is going to fall in. And there was a famous decision where a judge said the following. He said to, I'm not sure he said this directly to the Loving family, but said it nonetheless, said, God, sir, put different races on different continents for a reason. God never wanted the races to mix. Are you kidding me? That was in my lifetime. So we use God, we use religion, we use tradition, we use all those things, and then we use hyperbole about the world coming to an end, and dogs will marry cats, and pomegranates will marry watermelons, and what's next? No one's arguing for anything next. If you believe in gay rights, and it sounds to me like all these politicians do, they acknowledge inherently something about two people of the same sex having some rights. If you're going to acknowledge some, but can't acknowledge all of them, then you're running the 90-yard dash, and that's un-American, and it's certainly undemocratic, and that's my party's Democrat, not democratic in the context of America. And I don't think the Democratic Party will long stand on a separate but unequal platform. And that's why I think we're in trouble on this unless we just cut to the chase and do what Kucinich and do what Mrs. Edwards has done and do what everyone else has done and just get it out of the way. Say, we're for equality, period. Move on to the next thing. Let's talk about education, healthcare, and the environment, and other things, because that's what most people care.
And we might find out soon here in California, the city in this case.
Yeah, well, we got those judges there. My friends, my father was on the Court of Appeals for years. I wish he was still on there. I know he'd have to be recused. He was one of those activist judges. It's ironic, most of these activist judges have been Republicans that have read the Constitution. It's interesting, someone else who apparently has read the Constitution is the president. And it's suggestive the president is pretty upset about the Constitution that he always is talking about embracing because he wants to change it. He wants to right discrimination. I love this. Here's these guys, there's Pat Buchanan and all these serious folks on Fox Network. We're going to, and they ask the questions of the Romneys and the McCains. I'm going to appoint constitutional constructionists, not one of these activist judges that are writing laws. Yet their own president is arguing to change their constitution. Seems to me a little disconnect. And for Mitt Romney and others that believe that these constitutional amendments need that, it seems that someone should do a follow-up question and try to square that. Sir, what is wrong with the Constitution that you need to feel needs to be changed? And there's a reason it needs to be changed. They're right. There's nothing in the Constitution that allows people to be discriminated based on their sexual orientation. And so that's a kind of an unfortunate position for the Republican right in this country. And that's why ultimately there's going to be gay marriage. And that's a wonderful thing because everyone should be treated the same way.
From your lips to 9 judges of yours.
Yeah, please. I know it's tough, but do the right thing, you'll be known in history for having done the right thing. That's courage, that's nobility.
So to come more local for a second,
Yeah.
San Francisco is an expensive city to live in.
Yes.
And no matter how you look at it, that's
I
going to
know.
be true. It's going to be true for the foreseeable future.
Seems to be, yeah. Unless there's a major earthquake.
Right. So I know you have an initiative, which is to bring up a savings bond for children.
Yeah.
But how do we actually get something that's more, get families more involved in the city, to stay in the city, so that once they have kids, they don't leave?
Love it. Here's what we're doing. We're the only city in the state of California doing universal preschool, providing it regardless of your ability to pay. We believe in early childhood education, that's why we're funding it. We have the highest minimum wage in the state of California, I believe the second highest in the United States outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have a working families tax credit to allow working families to keep more of what they earn, and that's matched by our ability to pull down the federal earned income tax credit. We've got a program called Communities of Opportunity that's focusing on families and connecting them to individual development accounts, connecting them to free savings, focusing on financial literacy, focusing on asset creation, asset development. We are building more affordable housing at any time in our city's history, and we're building affordable housing for people at all income levels, not just the very low income, which of course I'm mostly proud of in terms of the homeless efforts we're doing, but for working families and the working poor. It's not enough. All of that in and of itself is not enough. So that's why we're doing other things like baby bond, where we want to incentivize savings and a culture of savings at a time we're seeing an increase in bankruptcies, an increase in foreclosures, an increase in focus on people's debt. We want to start creating a disciplined approach that once you're born, you have savings. You've already been banked. And we want to match that savings over the course of a lifetime. And once that savings bond matures at 18, we want you to contribute back through volunteer initiatives so you're part of the community. So there's an initiative there that locks in the notion of where you are, your birthplace. It says that because of your opportunity to be born in our city, because of the privilege, because of the right, depending on how you want to analyze it, because of the fact you were born here, we want you to receive something that's unique and special, that we hope creates a different construct in your life, in your family's life, in a different meaning. And then in order to get it, we want you to give back to that city that has given you something, in order to create a more sense of place and a greater sense of community. And to me, that's the ultimate family value. And by the way, this is a city that did universal health insurance 0 to 25. I was very proud when I first became mayor. I said we're going to expand it not 0 to 18, but 0 to all 19 to 24-year-olds. We've done that. And so when people say, well, you can't do universal health care to everybody else, I say, wait a second, you told me that we couldn't when we did 0 to 25. That's also very family friendly. So universal health insurance, 0 to 25 already, universal preschool, highest minimum wage, working families tax credits, a focus on affordable housing, people all income levels, individual development accounts, baby bonds, and other programs that I think really make this city special and unique, and it's still unbelievably expensive. And I know that it's not good enough for everyone, and that's, but we just don't give up, we keep trying.
So one of the things which was a problem with the city's transportation, and there was an article actually today in the Chronicle about teachers having to move the car every hour.
Yeah, some we've been dealing with.
Right, and having those as
Yeah.
according to the article.
Yeah.
But something you proposed last year was the free union.
Yeah.
And the report came out, it
wasn't a good
very
report.
positive about that.
I'm glad we did it, because if we didn't, we wouldn't know. And so I was really proud that we were willing to answer the question, what if? What if we did free union? I still think it's a viable idea, by the way. There's a suggestion that we've abandoned it. It's absolutely untrue. But with the constraints, the financial constraints, with the reality that the cards that are dealt and the reality that we're living in, it's going to be more challenging than we thought. But the door is not closed. The good news is we have a benchmark of where we are and where we would need to go in order to get there. And that report is going to be invaluable as we move forward. So I am now taking the time to analyze that in a much more robust manner. And I still believe in it. I do think that the economic lifeblood of a city is found in a sustainable transportation system that democratizes transportation. Not everyone can afford an SUV, nor should they. and not everyone can afford you to have an SUV, not that you do, because that is affecting my health and the health of this planet, and I'm not going to pay the cost for that, literally and figuratively. That's why we're doing a pollution tax, the first carbon tax in the United States, which I'm so proud of, that we want to replace our payroll tax, so we actually tax pollution for the first time. So we have got to improve public transportation. I don't want to, the burden now, if we're not going free, we're going to have to raise the fares, which is going to be a bigger burden, but we can't afford the system the way we're operating it currently, and so that means we have to think more creatively. And also, let me just conclude to your point, not everyone can take public transportation, especially in a city of steep hills, seniors, families, bunch of groceries. You're not going to bring 10 things in diaper bags and have 3 kids running around and wait for the bus in the rain. I get that. So people are going to need their cars. So you have to deal with that reality. You got to encourage alternative transportation, but in lieu of that, you got to encourage biodiesel, biofuel cars, CNG fuel cars, LNG fuel cars. You got to encourage fuel cell cars. You got to encourage hybrid cars and electric cars. And so we're going to be rolling out a series of new initiatives that when people do need to buy an automobile and do need to drive, that we're going to incentivize the type of cars they use through free parking, through different tiered pricing strategies, and try to accommodate for those that need their automobiles.
It's certainly an incentive for the HOV lanes. The figures for the HOV lanes are now gone.
Yep.
And so the cars that have them carry a $5,000 to $10,000 premium.
Exactly right.
So those are certainly a value to people and incentivizing people to move forward on that global warming and also to get people to less oil. Those are all important things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a greater foreign policy imperative than energy independence. It's sort of laughable. It's, you know, even in the debate last night, laughable, the lack of discussion about energy independence. I mean, my God, I mean, talk about one of the great no-brainers of all time. ExxonMobil comes out with their new profits, largest corporate profits in the history of mankind. They just announced Chevron right behind them, $100 a barrel oil, problems all over the Middle East, subsidizing the same dictators that are fueling fanaticism and fueling terror, costing us billions more to send our young men and women overseas, cutting our health clinics, cutting our investment in our cities, exacerbating income inequality in the country because we're not training the new workforce to get locked into this new economy. It's just so obvious, yet it seems still a remarkable disconnect at the national level between that reality and the one that we're suffering.
Certainly, and there's, unfortunately, when there was something on the California ballot, last year, it went down.
They would have spent $500 million if they could. Yeah, but you know what's disgraceful? Where's our legislature? That didn't need to go on the ballot. Where's the courage of this majority Democratic legislature? Where are we? Stand up. And where's our governor on this VLF? And where are the folks on the high-speed rail? These are environmentalists. Where are we on these things? Get serious. You guys, you're going to get serious. You're playing in the margins. All this cap and trade 5-10 years from now, our implementation of our climate action plans. What about today? What are you doing seriously about it today? Give me a break. With all due respect, give me a break. It's not just that we're living on borrowed time. We're literally living on borrowed time. Get serious about this.
That's one of the problems with the state government is that there's these 2/3 requirements for raising fees and raising taxes, where a minority can block the majority vote.
Tyranny of the minority.
Something like that.
It's usually the tyranny of the majority, but in this case, yeah. And that's got to change. All the set-asides need to change. All these fixed, I mean, we're on autopilot. It just has to. And by the way, I love set-asides. If it's for children, for youth, families, for healthcare, but we're our own worst enemy. Progressives are no different than others that want to set aside for law enforcement or something else. We've all got to come to grips with this. We've got to unshackle ourselves, because that's what the governor's problem is. Probably $14.5 billion problem. He doesn't have anywhere to go. You got all these propositions that mandate all these set-asides. The only place you have to go is Health and Human Services. So you eviscerate foster care programs, you eviscerate child care programs, mental health programs. And then you got more people out in the streets, more people in emergency rooms, more people being picked up by ambulances, more overtime, and it's a vicious cycle.
And the judiciary is underfunded as well.
and the judiciary, and we need to have our judges happy, so they can reflect upon their significance.
Exactly. And speaking of the ballot box budgeting, which is Proposition 92 is on right now for community colleges for this pretty much the same issues. Where it's locking funding for community colleges.
Yeah, what do you think of it?
It's a tough issue. Actually, Calitics actually endorsed Proposition 92.
Did you?
But it's I've been in groups which San Francisco Young Democrats actually oppose it, and California Young Democrats agrees with it. So it splits people right down the middle.
Yeah.
It's a really tough issue.
It's funny, when mayor's race, I got more support for the California Young Dems than my own Young Dems. So that's a surprise. I'm a big community college proponent. It's so important to the future and lifeblood of our cities in the state. So by and large support it, but there are some unintended consequences, which I get. So I mean, it's one of those things. I hate to be the politician. I appreciate both sides, but I really do on this. I think you guys are right to endorse it, but there comes at a price. All these things do. And it's very easy to get things on the ballot. That's a whole other issue in this state. You got money, you get things on the ballot. That's something else we got to reconcile. I like the initiative. I like the right of voters, particularly when legislatures and governors aren't doing what we want them to do. But we've got to look at these thresholds and hurdles, because both sides can corrupt that process. And look at these Indian gaming. I have one commercial, I'm for it, and I'm against it before I was for it. Then I said I was against it before I was for it initially, but now I'm not convinced.
I think we just need two then, spend over $100 million.
Yeah, Christ, put that in education, put that in healthcare. Yeah, and then we solve some real problems. We get a universal healthcare for all the Indian gaming, or the employees of Indian gaming. It's well, at the end of the day, follow the money is the rule in life and politics. Follow the money.
And then the one other issue on the ballot is Proposition 93, which you believe publicly support.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm not jumping up and down, because I think everybody's manipulating things here on the margins. But look, I never believe in term limits. I mean, I believe in people making a decision that this person's no longer representing them, and they have the right to do that in every election. Heck, they have the right every 2 years in the assembly.
And Proposition 140 was not so covertly an attempt to aim at San Francisco.
Of course, it was an attack on Willie Brown. I mean, why should we have term limits just because of one person? And this people in San Francisco were quite satisfied with Willie Brown. That's why they kept re-electing him. And we're quite pleased with his leadership of the state. And we should have that right in a representative democracy. He was our representative leader. And unfortunately, they decided to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And here we are where we are. And look, it's a time when I think Fabian Nunes is coming to his own. I think Speaker Parada, or Pro Tem leader, or majority. What is? I can't keep up with
Pro Tem.
Senator Pro Tem. I just call him Don, but I can't say that here because I get in trouble. But Senator Parada is they're kind of at the peak now. Their influence and understanding, their staffs are humming, and they actually have a decent relationship with the governor. Remarkably, a Republican governor. And now they're potentially gone. I have a little concern about that. And then you get young guys with no experience like myself that come up there, and we're speaker, and we're like looking around going, oh, I didn't know you were a lobbyist. I'm sorry, I agreed with everything you just said. And the lobbyists start taking over. So I think there's merits to it.
Excellent. And then one more thing before we go is...
And one time, cut in for a second.
Sure.
And we know that there is...
Oh, I mentioned it. You didn't even listen, right? I said, did I not say there were 10,000 people enrolled in San Francisco's health plan? As of
You
last
did?
week?
Oh, you did?
Yes.
I screwed up.
Unbelievable.
All right, and maybe if...
We're proud of that. 10,000 human beings have the dignity that comes with knowing that if they get sick, they won't go bankrupt. When they get sick, they'll be taken care of with the same quality health care that I get as mayor. That's a wonderful thing. I'm proud of that.
And then real quick before we go, the San Francisco budget is going to have some problems this year.
Yeah, so I said all this, and I'm going to be cutting programs and laying people off.
In addition, there's San Francisco's having problems, and part of that problem is that the state level funding for locals isn't the same as it used to be, especially after the failure of the BLF.
Yeah, that's just amazing.
So
this goes to $5 billion right there.
yeah,
That actually gets back to where we were, the vehicle life suite, that addresses the emission issue and how we reduce our carbon footprint, which is consistent with AB 32, which is consistent with getting people out of their cars and into public transportation, which is great for the local and global economy. Yet, where is our leadership?
Yeah.
They just like this, oh, the poll's so bad, I don't run away.
Yeah.
That's courage.
Yeah. They certainly are. A lot of money is left on the table that, and unfortunately in San Francisco, in localities, it's hard to actually get to add additional revenue.
How about this? We have a representative, to his credit, Mark Lenos, tried to say to the governor, give us the opportunity. The governor has vetoed this, I think twice, maybe wrong, but I know he's vetoed it. Saying, we want to institute or reinstitute a vehicle licensing fee. San Francisco wants to take all its cars, and we want to go to the voters and let the voters decide if they want to increase it. Governor won't even let us do that. So instead, that would raise about $64 million a year. So I keep the health clinics open, help poor people, all these folks returning from war overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq. And instead, no, we're just going to cut healthcare, cut education, cut welfare services to the poorest among us, because we don't have a choice, but we have no courage on the flip side. And you're telling me that a guy who makes $400,000 a year and has a big SUV won't pay a couple $100 more than vehicle to save these programs for at least one? You won't even give that person the opportunity to say that?
And it is a tremendous opportunity for the carbon purposes. There's a bill right now in the Assembly that's charges taxes for SUVs and reduces taxes for
The great scam and loophole that's precipitated and why American automobile industry is no longer the pace car, literally and figuratively, internationally, and why these Hondas and Toyotas have crushed us is because the perverse tax incentives for these guys to develop SUVs, because we've been doing the exact opposite at the federal level, and now we're no longer competitive in a global market where you have higher fuel efficiency standards, and even the ones we just imposed, where we're all patting ourselves on the back. Hey, one day we'll get ahead of where China is today. Boy, we're great. It is funny on a lot of levels. If it weren't so tragic, it would be more funny than it is, but it's frustrating. And I don't know. I mean, we just sit here at the local level, do what we can, help with the cards that we're given, and try our best. But see, bills like that make a lot of sense, and I'd support them, but I'm not in a position to support them. Beyond advocate for.
Right. And excellent. And I think that's it. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. It's 2008. You have 3 more years left in your term.
Yeah. 4. Yeah, 4. It's been 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Only 2 weeks. Yeah, God bless.
And so you have a limited time left in office for term limits.
Jesus, I just started. Now it's over.
So is there?
Well, it's all going to be for me the environment. I mean, we're doing more alternative fuels. We were trying to do more on solar, though the Board of Supervisors just stopped my solar bond, which was unbelievable. But I'm going to work around that. We're doing
one of the states here.
Yeah, right. We're going to do the carbon tax, which I'm committed to. Thank God that doesn't require board approval. I'm going to go to the voters. We are looking to continue to lead the state in environmental stewardship and sustainability. That's something that I'm committed to. We're going to commit to rebuild our public health hospital, San Francisco General Hospital, so we can fulfill the vision and dream that is universal health care for all uninsured San Franciscans. That is something that is enormously challenging, and as I said, 10,000 folks are in. 70+ thousand more need that same opportunity. We want to rebuild all our public housing. That is a legacy that I'm committed to in the next 4 years. Got to reduce the crime and violence. Violent crime in the city continues to go down. Went down again, double digits last year. So the homicide rate went up again. Unacceptable. I'm not satisfied with that. I'm not proud of that. I'm not. I accept the critique that we haven't together done enough.
And praise in all one area, in a few areas of the city.
So it's inexplicable and inexcusable. Put more money in violence prevention, put more police officers. We've got more collaboratives, we've got smarter people with state and federal roles being advanced, and we're still seeing it. It's immeasurably frustrating. So is all these other Bay Area counties up here as well. And so we've got to kind of go to that. It's interesting, you talk about that budget deficit. $11.5 million of our budget deficit is directly accountable to the COPS program at the federal level being cut by the Bush administration. That was a program that Clinton advanced for 100,000 new police officers. Isn't it ironic? You had 16,000 people gunned down in the streets of America, 16,000 gunned down in the streets of America, more than this war in Iraq has taken its toll since it began by a factor of 4 just last year. And we're surging in Baghdad with 130,000 or so troops over there, and we've eliminated the entire federal funding for the COPS program, and it's putting pressure on local government to decide, well, do we keep these police officers that were federally funded, or do we get rid of them at a time when crime and violence across the country is going up, and keep our health clinics open? That's the choice that the Bush administration is forcing us to have. One of the reasons our deficit keeps growing. And the state does the same thing. They cut programs, putting pressure on local government to make a decision whether or not those programs matter. Passing the buck. And the worst thing, we've had the biggest tax expansion in the history of our country in the last 7 years. Across this nation. And if you think I exaggerate, ask anyone in any city to compare and contrast what they were paying for a parking meter in 2002 compared to what they're paying for a parking meter today. Ask anyone in any city in America what they were paying for a parking ticket in 2002 compared and contrast what you're paying today, or what they were paying for public transit in 2002 compared to what they're paying today, or for their kids' soccer games when the field used to cost nothing to reserve, now it costs $5, $10. Go across the board, all these fees. Regressive. National Park. This is taxation. And it's the worst kind of taxes because it's regressive. Why has that been the case? Because we have a theological approach, believe we don't need to pay taxes. So all those fancy wealthy folks have all gotten the benefits of this thing. They've never done better in the history. They're always, and half of my friends are always complaining that's just not good enough. I'm sick of paying taxes. And half of them have fractional ownership in these airplanes, and they're complaining. And you've got then people at the lower level, never had more people at the lower level in the history of our country. 37 million people living below the poverty line. That's why Edwards is right on this and bring this stuff up. And then we have the biggest tax increase ever that further exacerbates that. Because the folks that can't afford it, the ones that are paying now more than ever. As disproportionate.
As Warren Buffett said, his secretary pays a higher tax rate than he does.
Exactly. And the poor guy only made $46 million last year.
Must be rough.
It is tough for him. Thank God he owns one of those marquee jets or whatever, so he doesn't need to necessarily pay for that. I'm sure it's part of the perk of ownership. I don't know, it's frustrating. It's not about class warfare. It's not about two Americas. It's not about denying people their aspiration to make money. That's an American value that is a wonderful thing. That has allowed our economy to grow and created opportunities and jobs for the rest of us. But it is about rationalization and honesty and transparency. And just cut the junk. There's another word for it, 4-letter word. And just come clean and just call it. Let's just say we don't really care about the environment if we're not going to touch the BLF. We really don't. I mean, we do, but we don't. We don't really care about the environment if we're going to be the only state in the United States that can't tax oil royalties. I mean, we do, but we really don't. I mean, we really don't care about the environment if we just think pouring more money into the Bay to expand runways for airlines is a solution to address the growing demand on our, for getting people to and from North and Southern California, when we oppose high-speed rail bond that actually can link the state. But we do. I mean, it's just comedy at a certain point. And with all due respect, I understand the challenges. A lot of people criticize me. I think it's fair. But I think some of the folks up Sacramento and the federal government need to look in the mirror and acknowledge that it's fair that they get criticized for a little bit of hypocrisy and speaking on both sides of the mouth.
Great.
I'm done preaching.
All right. I'll preach on it.
Too much preaching.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And it was a learning opportunity.
Hardly. Yeah, no, thanks for indulging me.
Yeah, so we'll be having this up soon on the interwebs.
Good. The interwebs.
Floating around.
People panicking that I said what I said. I'm sure Brian's fine.